ako sa jeepney, ikaw ang nakatabi.
When you Google jeepneys, you will be welcomed with blog posts like these, jeepney guides, history of the jeepney, etc. Tons of right UPS that paint the jeepneys as a unique Filipino invention that is a symbol of ingenuity, resilience, and durability. You will find jeepneys all over the Philippines, especially in the urban centers where they comprise majority of public transportation vehicles and serve over 50% of commuters. Its aesthetic is uniquely Filipino and decorated by local Filipino artists. So why is the Philippine government spending billions of pesos to get rid of them? Before jeepneys, wheeled transportation in the Philippines was dominated by horse-drawn carriages known as colesas, but as the automotive industry grew in the United States, they replaced the horses with internal combustion engines. This was huge sanitary upgrade because they no longer had to deal with massive amounts of horse manure in the city. These brand new ICE colesas became known as autocolesa or AC. The name autocolesa disappeared because of the events that transpired during the 1940s.
Men and tanks of the United States 8th Army press on toward Manila, as from 3 directions American forces converge on the great capital of the Philippines.
After the Second World War, the United States had supplied a massive amount of military jeeps that it used extensively in its military operations in the Pacific. With the war over, the U.S. military had no use for the jeeps anymore and tried to dispose of them without bringing them back to the United States. The entrepreneurial and ingenious Filipino spirit then transformed these military jeeps into personal vehicles and public transportation vehicles, thus shifting the language of calling these as colesas into jeepneys. Today over 240,000 jeepneys ply the roads of the Philippine archipelago and is the most ubiquitous form of transportation in most urban areas. These jeepneys, however, are not related to military jeeps of the Second World War, thank God. They'd be 70 years old if so. Today's modern jeeps trace their origins during the regime of Ferdinand Marcos. President Ferdinand Marcos created the People's Car Initiative. It was a failed government attempt to create the first Filipino automobile. Nonetheless, Marcos's progressive car manufacturing program gave us the Toyota Tamaro, Nissan Bida, and the Delta Mini Cruiser. After the fall of the Marcos regime, the new republic decided to continue the People's Car Initiative and renamed the program as the Car Development Program, which in turn created the Ford Fiera, the Mitsubishi Cimarron, and even the Volkswagen truck, the Truckbayan. Modified versions of the vehicles developed from the People's Car Initiative today make up a large portion of the contemporary jeeps you will see plying the roads today. If the government spent decades and an incalculable sum of money to create the jeep, why are they spending billions to get rid of them now? Today's jeeps are at the end of their life, with over 90% of them being older than 15 years old. A study found that a 16-seater jeepney produces as much greenhouse gas emissions as a modern 50-seater air-conditioned bus. Lacks safety features as passenger ride from the back. Everyone has heard of stories where the jeepney driver decides to step on the gas while the passenger has not yet alighted from the jeep and suffer injuries as a result. Crime in jeepneys are common as there is no way to identify passengers upon riding and none of them have CCTVs that may aid in their capture. Lacks PWD accessibility as the jeeps don't support ramps for a wheelchair or for people with mobility issues.
Hindi po ito isang sci-fi movie. Hindi po kayo namamalikmata. Pagkat ang mga sasakyang inyong nakikita ay sa ating pong bansa. Yan nga po ang ilan sa magiging itsura ng tinaguriang hari ng kalsada, ang makabagong jeepney.
In 2017, the government announced the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program. This would introduce a newer, safer, more accessible and sustainable upgrade path for Philippine public transportation. However, concerned groups currently involved in the industry rallied against it as the burden of shouldering the cost and the financial risk of the endeavor was placed squarely upon their shoulders. Drivers and operators refuse to consolidate as cooperatives or corporations as transportation groups see it as anti-poor. The jeepney drivers see the consolidation scheme as a way to remove their agency and ownership of their livelihoods as the current franchise rules are on a one franchise, one unit, one operator scheme. The sector, however, is long overdue for consolidation. It has become overregulated, with the operators having no control of the price of the fares in favor of commuters, leaving individual operators with take-home pay equivalent only to subsistence living, leaving the operators no capital to spend for the modernization program. If regulations are to shift transportation fares in favor of the operator, regulators cannot compel the operators to spend their new income in modernization of their jeepneys. Thus it is high time for the shareholders to form alliances and consolidate their positions, as it remains the only way for them to collect capital as a group and not individually. Refusal to take on risk of financial viability. Jeepney operators to this day remain skeptical of the financial viability of the modern jeepney, as the individual units cost from 1.6 million pesos to 2.2 million pesos. This large upfront investment has driven skepticism that amongst drivers that the modernization program is a scheme for the auto manufacturers to have customers at the expense of the operators. The government, for its part, has promised to loan the capital for the modern jeepneys through the Development Bank of the Philippines, as well as shouldering the initial down payment of the modern jeep. The terms of the DBP loan are stipulated as having 6% APR with 7 years to pay. The interest rate and the standing ban on vehicles older than 15 years from driving on the road is continuing to drive skepticism on whether this will really benefit the operators. Financial experts from Agatan et al. However claim that the ROI on the modern Jeep is at 490% throughout a 30-year lifespan, and the investment will have a payback period of a measly 3.28 years. However, this estimate of a 30-year lifespan will not be viable due to the age limit of street-legal vehicles pegged at 15 years. Financial issues from slow disbursement rate. Even when the operators agree to modernize their fleet, the government has slashed the budget of the modernization program, and of the appropriated budget only 15% of the promised 2.2 billion pesos have been disbursed so far. Nevertheless, the Philippines needs a safer, more sustainable, eco-friendly and PWD-accessible transport. It is, however, unfair to expect the driver owners to shoulder all the risk in taking on loans to modernize the fleet. Furthermore, there needs to be greater emphasis on the consolidation of the industry so as to better monitor the safety and environmental regulations, as well as for the cooperatives to organize themselves to be able to handle the modernization and take care of the drivers' interests. The decision to modernize, however, might no longer be up to the driver operators, as President Duterte has already set a deadline 4 years ago.
Si Pangulong Duterte, nagpakawala tuloy ng tirada laban sa mga kumukontra rito.
January 1, pag hindi nyo na modernize yan, umalis kayo. Mahirap kayo. Sige.